What makes a great nation? What makes the greatness of a nation? Is it superior intelligence? Is it abundant natural resources? Or is it a primordial yet sincere faith, the kind that helped them build a decent society before greatness was ever named? History often explains greatness through power, territory, and wealth. But if we look deeper, all of those are merely outcomes. The more fundamental and important question is, what within the spiritual world of a people allows them to build a great nation, and to preserve that greatness over time? In this story, faith is not blind obedience or hollow rituals. Faith here is belief in the most fundamental human values: inherent dignity, freedom, justice, integrity, and personal responsibility. It is not a faith sustained by the force of power, but a faith that constructs identity, culture, and civilization. It is the spiritual foundation that allows a nation to become prosperous and powerful without losing itself. Faith precedes the state. That primordial faith was not born of the state. It existed before constitutions, before declarations, and even before America existed. It was carried by ordinary people, people who left their homeland not to seek glory, but to live in accordance with their conscience and dignity. From the early 17th century, the English began to set foot in North America. But it was not until the 1620s, after decades of simmering religious and moral conflict in England, that waves of migration truly brought families, communities, and their beliefs to the New World. They were not fleeing poverty. They were fleeing a society where faith was tightly bound to power. When faith is captured by power. After the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century, England was no longer Roman Catholic. The king was not only the head of state, but also the head of the church. Faith, once a matter of personal conscience, became part of the political order. On the surface, that society appeared stable. Belief was unified, order was maintained. But beneath it, a deep contradiction formed. For many English people, faith no longer flowed from the purity of conscience, but was increasingly shaped by the will of power. And when faith is captured by power, it no longer protects human beings. It begins to control them. It was from this memory that the journey to North America became a flight for faith. Faith separated from power. The migrants did not bring a new religion. They brought Protestant faith. But upon arriving in the New World, that faith began to take on a different form. In Europe, Protestantism was closely tied to the state. In North America, it was separated from centers of power and became a voluntary choice of each individual. There was no supreme church, no authority ruling in the name of God. Each person confronted faith on their own and bore responsibility before their own conscience. In this understanding, faith did not encourage blind submission. On the contrary, it emphasized inner discipline, serious labor, integrity in action, and responsibility to the community. Faith was born of freedom, so it did not become a state religion. Yet precisely because of that, it became the deep spiritual foundation of society. God does not grant power, God sets limits. In this emerging spiritual world, God was not understood as the one who grants ruling power to humans. God was the supreme moral standard, a reference point above all individuals and beyond all institutions. This belief did not replace human thinking. It did not absolve responsibility. On the contrary, it compelled people to live more seriously with their own freedom. When God became the moral standard, God simultaneously became the limit of human power. No one stood above all. No one possessed absolute authority, and no truth was exempt from self-examination. From this emerged a very distinctive attitude: humility before power and vigilance toward those who claim to speak in the name of truth. From faith to institutions. If no one has absolute authority, then power must be limited. If human beings are fallible, then the systems they create must always be controlled. Faith did not oppose reason. It laid the groundwork for reason to act responsibly. God did not write the laws, but the moral standard compelled people to use reason to design laws and mechanisms to restrain power. For this reason, North American society, though deeply faithful, was still able to coexist with diverse beliefs. Faith was respected, but not monopolized. Freedom was protected, but did not descend into chaos. Faith becomes a way of life. On that harsh land, there was no central authority to guarantee order, no church imposing norms, no state providing shelter. What held communities together was inner discipline and a shared belief in moral standards. Faith was not measured by profession, but by action. Serious labor, keeping one's word, self-reliance, and personal responsibility. Freedom did not mean doing whatever one wished. Freedom meant bearing responsibility for one's choices. Gradually, these standards became social morality. No one was forced to believe, but everyone was expected to live responsibly. From this, a new kind of person emerged. Someone who believed that freedom only has meaning when accompanied by inner discipline. Success. The most dangerous test, but faith, no matter how pure, does not sustain itself forever. When communities were small, faith helped them survive. When society grew powerful, faith faced a harder test than adversity: success. Success can cause people to forget why they began. Values are easily turned into symbols. Standards are easily replaced by slogans. And when faith becomes merely form, it no longer restrains power, it begins to serve power. Americans understood this danger very well, not because they were more virtuous, but because their historical memory was still close. Protecting faith by limiting power. They understood that even people of faith can err when holding absolute power. Thus, the great problem was not how to make people believe more, but how to ensure that no one could use faith to dominate others. To protect faith, one must first limit power. Not to remove faith from society, but to protect it from being captured. Not to make people believe less, but to ensure that no one can coerce others into belief. Thus, the United States did not build an atheistic society, nor did it build a religious state. It built a society where people are free to believe according to conscience, so long as they do not deny the dignity of others. Faith meets intellect. From this logic, great ideas emerged. Individual rights precede the state. Power must be divided and checked. No institution is exempt from oversight. The U.S. Constitution is not a document of power. It is a mechanism designed to protect the most sacred values by limiting human power. A nation is truly great only when it is lucid enough to understand this, that what is sacred does not need power to be protected, but needs limits so that power cannot violate it. And it is precisely at that meeting point between humble faith and sober intellect that a great nation was formed.